cultures survive, by which I mean those cultures survive which foster the health and well-beings of individuals, right? If a culture is to survive, it must support and foster the health and well-being of individuals. And this is how we can know what a culture will be, because cultures are only those things which foster the health and well-being of individuals. Cultures that don't foster those things have died out, or at least are in the process of dying out, right? So this evolutionary theory of culture, right, is only those cultures survive which optimize human basic well-being, okay? So there's a basic question to this, right? Well, if you're going to talk about cultures only surviving that optimize human well-being, he's already said that those include human nature, right? That optimizing your well-being includes the constraints put on your life by your own psychology, right? So the question is, what is human well-being? There's a list in here of things, in fact, on this same page, right, of things that count as, he sometimes calls them biogram needs, but they're basically human needs. I thought this was one of those points where I didn't see any reason why he had to invent this word. By biogram needs, he just means biological needs, for the most part. What are the basic human needs, according to him? They're right at the top of page 9. Right? The categories of responses whose cost and benefits underwrite cultural selection. Right? What does cultural selection mean? Those cultures which survive. And cultural evolution are empirically derived from the biological and psychological sciences that deal with the genetically given needs, drives, aversions, and behavioral tendencies of Homo sapiens. Sex, hunger, thirst, sleep, language acquisition, need for affective nurturance. What is affective nurturance? Anybody? Yeah. Upbringing and care, kind of like. Yeah, upbringing is good though. Nutritional and metabolic processes. I'm not sure what he means by that other than eating. We already mentioned hunger. Vulnerability to mental and physical disease and to stress by darkness, cold, heat, altitude, moisture, lack of air, and other environmental hazards. Those are the human needs. So what does it mean? Cultures will survive only insofar as they satisfy those human needs. This brings to mind two questions, and I have put those two questions down as suggestions of things to write about. They're bullet points number 4 and 5, so the 4th and 5th bullet point. First one, Harris argues that cultures evolve over time to fit human needs and goals. Do you agree with this idea? In other words, do cultures get better over time so that cultures which do not fit human needs and goals must either change or perish? What do you guys think? Do cultures evolve to fit human needs? Aisha, you look unsure, so I'll call her. What do you think? Do cultures evolve to fit human needs?
Yes. I find that culture is the same as evolving.
Oh, okay, so they don't change. Cultures don't change. They say, okay, so they don't evolve, and that's one thing. Yeah, right.
I feel that to some extent they do, to some extent they don't, and that cultures that, like, not everything in culture is designed to help the human species survive. For example, cutting off people's fingers when a loved one dies doesn't help them survive, but it apparently doesn't hinder their survival, therefore it stays.
Okay, so some things can survive which don't hinder their survival. But what if I wanted to make an argument that it does help this culture survive, that cutting off people's fingers reminds people that war is terrible, and that 40 years after somebody dies in a war, that person's gone, and your attachments to them may have weakened. We don't usually mourn for 40 years, right? But if somebody's missing their fingers, that's a reminder every day that someone's died. And if that reminder's there every day, the same way that we create memorials to the fallen war did, is it possible to at least argue? Right?
I suppose it's possible, but then wouldn't that same culture not fight every single day or every week as they do?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I would argue that they fight, it would seem, well, I don't know about trusting the film completely, It would seem from the film that they fight a lot, but not many people die. When we go to war in America, lots of people die, right? When the Donnie go to war, somebody dies every couple of weeks, right? And that's it, yeah.
Seems to be more reasonable ways to murder somebody than
Okay, but this is a great point. Harris does not care about reasonable. The fact that this seems barbaric, I agree with you, there are more reasonable ways, but Harris doesn't care, okay? The fact that this seems barbaric and it seems cruel, it's also sexist, right? The fact of all those things doesn't matter as long as it helps the culture to survive, right? This is a really important point. Insofar as he's positioning himself as a kind of social Darwinian, right? Harris doesn't really care about what seems respectable or reasonable or moral or nice. Morality is just part of the superstructure, right? It's not even part of the basic structure of society. The basic structure of the society is economics and politics. It's not morality. So Matt, I agree with you, but can you see from Harris' point of view that that doesn't matter?
Yeah, you don't care.
He doesn't care.
Oh, you probably shouldn't.
And he probably what?
You probably should.
He probably should, but his theory of culture is that only those cultures survive which attend to economic and political needs, right? And that do that through rather I should say through economics and politics deal with, let me read the list again, sex, hunger, thirst, sleep, language acquisition, etc. Right? So only those that deal mostly through this and only through this. So let's take the example, actually he has an account, this is another gendered account, it's very interesting that gender comes into it a lot, of feminism. What is Harris's account of feminism? Did anyone pick this up? Where does he think, how is feminism caused according to Harris? Not what is it like, but how is it caused? Anybody? It's on the last couple pages. Feminism is caused, right, by the change from an industrial economy to a service economy, okay? After the change of an industrial economy, there's more jobs that open up that are outside of goods producing industrialism, he says, and that have more to do with service and information producing industrialism. And that all of these services that were increasingly called up into the economy called upon housewives, basically, to get into the economy in low-paying service jobs. Okay? So what he says is that feminism came about because the economy transformed. In order for the economy to keep functioning, women had to move from the household into service jobs. Now you can argue with this evidence on one case. There's strong evidence that particularly before the 20th century, and particularly in agriculture, women did a lot of work that was productive outside of what you might strictly call a domestic sphere, right? That was involved in the economy, right? But insofar as you agree with him, right, that there were housewives that moved into the economy after World War II, right? He's arguing that feminism came out of this, right? So feminism generally makes the claim that women deserve equal respect, right, as men, right? That's a basic claim. Does that make sense? It's a basic claim. We've all heard of the notion of feminism, right? That it's basically the notion that women deserve equal respect from men. He is arguing that this respect is not a basic human need. So the cause of feminism were changes in the economy, okay? It is not the case that you can talk about feminism as being something that's part of our culture in its own right. It's only part of the larger dynamic of women going into the economy because of the economy transformed. And that's why we have feminism. We don't have feminism because some women were brave enough to talk about how important respect was. We have it because the economy changed. Right? That's a theory. And again, you can argue with that theory. But let me add one more wrinkle. So what people have answered to Harris is saying, you know what you're saying, Harris? You're saying that ideas don't matter. The only thing that matters is whether or not this culture can satisfy the needs of sex because of its reproductive importance in particular, hunger, thirst, language acquisition because in society people need to work together,